PCO was at the Hammerstein Ballroom at the World versus GCW, whatever it's called, their pay per view that they were doing. From what I hear, is one of the worst pay per views of all time. It's like Heroes of Wrestling bad. I think they got similar amount of votes to Genesis, but Genesis was in the Observer, but Genesis was 100% thumbs up, and I think only 2 people gave thumbs up to GCW. So it's like legit rated as, and on Cage Match, it's rated as one of the worst pay per views of all time. But anyway, PCO was there, and he took the digital media title with him and cut a anti TNA promo and took a sledgehammer to the digital media title. So we thought, Game Changer Wrestling claims they didn't know that this was going to happen. In fact, I guess they said that there's some word out there and some reporting out there that he kind of let them know he wanted to do an anti-TNA rant, and they told him not to. Just say, hey, you're a free agent, and you're here in GCW now. But PCO is crazy. A lot going on with PCO. There's some stuff that I can't even get into with PCO. Okay. But let's just say not looking good for that guy, unfortunately. But, he proceeds to then take a sledgehammer to the digital media title. And they end up cutting the feed. He's cutting up an anti-TNA rant. But so Brett Lauderdale, cut the feed and went to something else because they still want to work with TNA. So they say that's all in the up and up, and that's a shoot. I'm just going to go ahead and believe him because I got no evidence to the contrary. While I was looking at it, the guy that was trying to get PCO out of the ring it seemed like he was really over the top to me. So I just assumed it was a work. Right. And some people thought it was a work at the time, like even in GCW, it's like, hey, he's working an angle for a TNA show. But that wasn't the case. So nobody from TNA knew what he was going to do. GCW didn't know what he was going to do. The guy he went rogue. He went on his own, he's crazy. Right. And everybody knows he's crazy. And that's part of the reason why they like him is because he's off. So it was a whole thing. Well, as it turns out, the digital media title that he smashed was not the real belt. It was reported by Fightful that it was a replica. That pissed PCO off. So him and Bertrand Hebert, author of the Andre the Giant book, which I love, they're friends. Okay, this guy Bertrand's not doing PCO any favors, by the way. Unfortunate, because I'm a fan of his. But I'm a fan of both those guys. But TNA apparently switched the titles out in December at the Atlanta tapings. PCO reported that, and BQ reported that, and I believe BQ. And in fact, BQ told me, and I think he told other people, he put it out there on Twitter, that he actually FaceTimed somebody in the company that had the belt, the real belt, and that they swapped it out on PCO, essentially because PCO had become erratic and becoming more difficult to deal with, and they kind of saw something like this coming. So they ended up just giving him a replica belt because he was just a hard guy to deal with. So he's out there smashing a replica belt. That belt, by the way, for a replica was pretty tough. Maybe it's like plastic, and that's why it didn't break. That actually kind of like makes more sense to me. But he is going through a lot. So here's what happened. So Dave Meltzer's reporting some stuff. I've talked to PCO personally. I know he talked to my buddy Gerard. His DMs are open. He's talking to everybody. So he told me that TNA owed him money, and lots of it. Okay. And he also, I was the one that kind of put out there that, because he straight up told me that Scott D'Amore said that he was going to be the world champion in Montreal for Slammiversary. Okay. So BQ looked into that, and turns out that is true. He not only was he making more money than he's ever made in his career, he was on the biggest contract he's ever had. He was due to make a raise, and he was also due to be the world champion based off of promises that Scott D'Amore made to him that he never put on paper. Okay. And this is all from BQ. And so they negotiated terms, and it was obviously a lesser money deal than what he was expecting. And I think that's where some of the issues started. And they were going to give him less dates. And ultimately, they he agreed to those terms. He agreed to those dates. He was set to come in. The contract was never signed. And then TNA then came back to him and ultimately pulled the deal, right? So they essentially fired PCO, right? Not technically, but basically, because he was a hard guy to deal with, and I think they're a little bit worried about him. And he's 57 years old. The guy's beat up. He's barely moving, and they put him in a tag because the guy's not moving around so well. And that's why he was in that tag with Sami Callihan. They wanted to bring him in on less dates because they still like PCO. They respect PCO, but they probably didn't want to use him a whole lot. So they wanted him to take a lower overall money deal, probably same amount per date, but just bring him in on less dates. And that I think that was the plan, but ultimately they decided just to not bring him back at all. And then here's what happened. He went and he smashed a fake belt, and now he's pissed. And I think he's going to go do a podcast. He is not happy about all of this. PCO thinks very highly of himself, and he should. He's had a great career. But he thinks that he's at one level, and TNA thinks that he's at another level, and I think TNA is more realistic here. But he did a great job with Slammiversary. If you want to talk about like where the company's turnaround started, it started in June. It was Against All Odds in Chicago, right? And then Slammiversary was the first event in a long time that made TNA look like they're a big time promotion. Okay. And PCO deserves credit for that. Nobody else sold those tickets but PCO. He deserves credit for that. He should be applauded for that. That didn't mean he deserved a huge pay raise, because everywhere else they're going, they've actually surpassed the gate for that. And because they gave away a lot of tickets, and they have surpassed the ticket sales altogether since then. So I think he thought that he was going to be able to do that everywhere. It turns out it was like located in Montreal, and then he's just a draw there. They could have went back there and he would have done a similar house, but there's not really much you could do with PCO. So I get why TNA wanted to move on from him. It made sense. So, so that's the PCO talk. It's not like TNA's broke and TNA can't afford PCO. It's like the guy is 57. He's beat up. He was holding the belt hostage. They were winding him down anyway. They moved him into a tag with Sami Callihan. And so I was hoping that when PCO left with the belt and he wasn't coming back and he smashed the belt, that we would just never have it again. But it turns out Steph DeLander is now and I'll get to the Impact reaction, but so Steph DeLander is now the digital media champion. So like TNA is back. It's like all the way back now. Okay. So that is what happened with PCO. It's a sad situation. PCO doesn't appear to be doing well. And in fact, I kind of just quit talking to him because I just feel like the guy is just not all there right now. And I don't know, that's just my read on the situation. Like, it just seems like there's a lot more going on with him than people even know. And so I'm just going to leave it at that. But on my conversations with him, it just seemed like I was talking to a guy that just wasn't all there. Okay. With any type of like public interaction and private interaction. And so I'm just like, I just ended the conversation, and I wasn't about to get into an argument with the guy and try to explain TNA's position. It'd be like talking to a brick wall. So there's no point, and it's not my job. I don't get paid to do that. So I'm not going to broker peace between PCO and TNA. PCO is always going to be mad at TNA, and that's just the way it's going to be. But I can tell you right now, and this is from BQ, PCO or TNA is not mad at PCO. They still like PCO, and I think they're just kind of worried about the guy. And I can tell you just based off my interactions with him, I'm kind of worried about the guy too. And I hope he's okay. I hope he's well. I wish him happiness. I wish him success. And I hope he makes a lot of money. But I hope he does it without beating up his body too much anymore, because that is a legit concern. All right. Only got a couple more things, and then, man, we got to get to this Impact reaction. Frankie Kazarian re-signed with TNA. Didn't really say how long, but it's one of those things like, talent cuts. Look at the guys they cut. Look at the guys they're keeping. There's a common theme. These are people that they're using, that they want to use, that are pushing into big spots. Frankie Kazarian's one of those guys. Frankie Kazarian's not taking a pay cut to stay here. Frankie Kazarian's coming back on more money deal, for sure. And he's been one of the most featured acts in the company. He's done a great job. I hope they're not trying to put that belt on that man. No, I hope that's not the case. I just don't see any money in that. There's a couple guys in the company that I see money as champion. He ain't one of them, even though I really like him. I think he's a good heel. But he's another guy in his like mid 40s, and I think we need to get younger at that level. And there's a few other guys that I think are ahead of him. But he's been a great signing for the company, and I look forward to him staying around for a long time. Yeah, so good news. Frankie, the future Kazarian, has re-signed with TNA. I would say even bigger news is Mustafa Ali has signed with TNA, and I saw that one coming. I've been talking about it for weeks. In fact, I put him on a couple thumbnails because I was pretty confident he was coming back. It makes total sense for him. Makes total sense for TNA. I think TNA used him better than WWE ever did, and I think that they're using him better than AEW ever would. And I'm sure he is not coming in cheap, right? Why do you get rid of Rhino? Why do you get rid of Trent Seven? Why do you get rid of Kushida? Why do you get rid of PCO? So you can pay a guy like Mustafa Ali, who did good business with the company, was always a featured performer, featured act, had great matches, can talk, can work, has a character, does big storylines. He is everything that you're looking for in a guy with this company. He works hard, and he puts over the company, and he goes to all these other places and puts over the company. He's a company man. At least now. He wasn't in WWE. He was a whiny pain in the ass when he was in WWE. But in TNA, he's a featured performer. As long as you're featuring him, he is going to be a good soldier for the company. And I think that that's like why the two sides were able to mesh, and why they ultimately were able to come to a deal. He hasn't been around since July of last year, but they were able to get him back into the fold. I think they always thought that they could. They never took him off the roster page, and the long game played off. They were able to finally come to a deal. I think they're able to come to a deal because these other contracts fell off, right? And that's kind of the word out there with some of the other folks that are looking to get into TNA. They're waiting for some of those other big contracts, those bloated, overpaid Diamore cronies making really good money, making more money than they're bringing in. Those contracts fall off the books. Now they're able to pay Mustafa Ali because they don't have this big money TV deal. They may have more money coming into the company, but it's not like insane money like AEW is making. So they have to spend wisely and efficiently and manage their budget appropriately. And now you're seeing the fruits of that with a Mustafa Ali signing. I think he's a guy that could be the world champion for this company. I don't know when, because right now it's Joe's time. But I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at Mike Santana as like both of those guys could be world champions 2025 and 2026. And in fact, it looks like they're starting a program together, which I like. Josh Alexander and Jordan Grace are officially out. They're gone. Boom, done. Josh Alexander finished up last night. He actually did a farewell speech to everybody, and I saw the pictures. So thank you to my friends over there. But the entire roster came out as after he did a big goodbye speech. They held him up on their shoulders. They gave him a proper send off. I don't know that that's ever going to air, but that did happen. So. Looks like he's going to go. And my prediction would be WWE. I'd like to see him go reunite the North with Ethan Page. I think there's money there for them as a tag team. I think that's how they get on the main roster. Despite the fact that I think Josh Alexander in the ring is just as good as anybody in that company. But I think he's going to have to get in there and kind of work his way up, because he's not a big enough star to just come in like Penta did, where they built Penta up and he came in and looked like a megastar night one. I don't think that's Josh. I think he's going to have to get in there with Ethan Page and work his way up into becoming a star. And I think he's got the talent to be able to do it. He has been the number one heel in this company since he turned last year. He has done such great work as a heel. I'm really sad that Josh is leaving. I'm sad that it's over. I think that he was, and I put it out there, the night that he lost to Mike Santana, he did his thank you. In the ring, he's right up there with AJ Styles, Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe as one of the best. I'd put him right behind them, but as one of the best in-ring performers to ever be TNA World Champion. I really do. And I think that if he does go to WWE, he's going to impress them so much that he's going to end up working his way into a top spot. Not a top spot, but into a pretty good spot there where he will be a featured act, because I think he's that talented. And I hope that they saw some of his work as a heel because I thought he did great. He's also a great babyface. Just just an amazing performer, been amazing champion for TNA and an amazing example and representative for the company. You always knew that when Josh Alexander was on the card that you were going to have at least one good match. You always knew that when he was the world champion, the main event was never going to disappoint, and it never did. When he was in the main event, we never had a disappointing main event. It always ruled, always ruled. Even the Bully Ray match, it ruled, right? Everything he did was great. And so sad to see him go, but I'm happy for him. Looks like he's going to go get a big payday. IO Production said, me too, sad and grateful for Grace and Josh. And then Jordan Grace looks like she is WWE bound. So Josh Alexander seems like it's more up in the air than me just predicting the WWE. Jordan Grace, WWE bound, 100%. That's where she's going. She's already reported to PC earlier this week. They're probably working out ideas for her. I hope she goes straight to the main roster. I don't want her to do NXT. I think she's as good or better than everybody on the main roster, either shows, Raw or SmackDown. They're not just going to call her up willy-nilly, though. They want to have a storyline and a plan in place. It's not like AEW where they sign people, they bring them in and they just let them sit home for a while. They will actually want to have a program for them on WWE television right now. They want them to be factored in at some point. Not that they can't make that mistake. I think they made that mistake with Dragon Lee where they just brought him over and didn't have a good plan in place. And he hasn't really, and now he's out on paternity leave, but before that he wasn't really being featured a whole lot. So I think they want to do it with Jordan Grace the same way that they did with Penta. I think that Jordan Grace is that big of a star. I think she is. And so I think you debut her in a big spot either on SmackDown or Raw. That's the, as a guy that's been watching Raw lately, I've watched 3 episodes already this year, and I don't know that I'm stopping. I've been recapping, although I didn't get to this week. It's just too busy. But I think that's the move. You just bring her right to the main roster. So, and lastly, before the Impact reaction show, wow, I've done an hour of just news. I don't want to harp on this too much because there's some people are upset about it, but it's out there. It's news. Rob Van Dam went and visited Chris Bey. They both live in Las Vegas. And so RVD went to go visit him. He had just gotten back from the hospital where he was at for a couple months. He said that Chris Bey was paralyzed for a bit, but he is no longer paralyzed. He's got all his feeling back and he's doing great. And he's going to work his way to a comeback one day. I think that's beautiful news. That's amazing news. God bless him. We all love Chris. And, there's a little bit of controversy during Genesis, not really minor stuff about TNA doing a GoFundMe for Chris Bey. And people are out there like, why isn't TNA just paying for everything? TNA is paying for everything. The GoFundMe is just quality life stuff. Okay. And it's fans being able to show some support. So, them promoting the GoFundMe is not because they're not paying for stuff. They are. They paid for all his medical. They're still like paying him out his contract. Like they're not taking care of the guy. And the GoFundMe and all the eBay stuff and all the auction stuff that they're doing, what I think that's what it's called, is more just quality of life stuff to get him even more. They don't have the same resources that an AEW has or WWE has. They have a lot of resources to be able to take care of all the medical stuff and to pay out his contract, but they don't have to completely overhaul his quality of life. So that's what that's about. So good news that Chris Bey is fine. Not fine. Still got a long haul, but he's not paralyzed. That's the best news. And RVD is saying that he's going to make a comeback. And so that's the first report that we've had on him at all. No one knew that he was paralyzed. And IO says some crew members weren't happy that got out. Yes. I think that if Chris Bey didn't want RVD to say all of that, he would not have. That's my take on it. RVD is not a stupid person. I think RVD was excited to share some good news about a guy that he likes. And so there was nothing nefarious going on. But I think people in TNA have been instructed not to share his medical information, and they have not. And so I think that's why they're upset. But I'm happy that Chris Bey is not paralyzed. And then according to RVD, who just saw him and visited him, like he's doing well and he's working his way to come back. I'm not worried about him coming back to pro wrestling. I just want him to have a good life, right? And having a good life, those GoFundMe's and those auctions that they're doing and all the promotion that they're doing for him is going to help him have a good life going forward. Okay, that was a lot of news.